as much as we're talking about teams that are firing on all cylinders, time to transition to one that most certainly is not, and it's not the Red Bulls this time. Carlos Bocanegra out in Atlanta United for the first time. They are going to have a new person in charge of signings and transfers. I believe that is called the CSO, the Chief Soccer Officer, and he is gone from Atlanta after 4 years without a playoff victory or series victory. I'm just going to send it over to you. We're going to reflect on the time in Atlanta, what you think about it. I'm hoping you don't jump too far ahead, but then we'll talk about the future of Atlanta and what sort of transfers they might be bringing in. So I'll just drop the mic and let you go on your rant.
Okay. I hope I'm not gonna piss off too many Atlanta fans covering this section. But yeah, so reflecting on his time with Atlanta, so he's been here since the beginning, since the first season, and there have been a lot of really good signings during his tenure here. I mean, you think back to guys like Josef Martinez, Miguel Almiron, you have Thiago Almada, Yakumakis, like even in the times where he did have swings and misses, I always feel like there were ambitious attempts from Atlanta. You know, you have your Barcos, your PT Martinez, which especially in the early years of Atlanta just was not very common in the league. It was pushing the boundary of how ambitious a team can be. And I always really respected that. I always really liked that Atlanta was ambitious and went and tried to bring in the big names and the exciting young talents and not afraid to splash the money. I feel like there were obviously very valid criticisms from a lot of fans in terms of like kind of tearing apart a very successful team because you look back to 2018 and I feel like the team started slowly like fold away and little bits and pieces were slowly moving on and moving away. And I think that's where a lot of people started to build some gripes with Bocanegra and even just the front office in general and the way that they handled that. And losing guys like Nagby is really like that hurts a lot. But I don't know what's going on behind the scene. Atlanta's intention to lose him. I think he's from Ohio, so he probably wanted to move somewhere closer to home. Or I should say he grew up in Ohio. I think he was born in Liberia. But even outside of Nagby, there was other moves as well. Just not necessarily the top guys where they're selling them on and making money like Almira and Almada, which I thought they've done a really good job with that as well. But I kind of look back at his tenure and I was definitely on the Boca out train for a little while now, especially these most recent years because the team, like you had said, has been in bad form. Missing the playoffs in a few seasons, and even when they make the playoffs, they're not getting out of the first round, which was tough for them last year. They came up against Columbus. We talk so much about how good Columbus is, so that's it wasn't going to be an easy series for them regardless. But now that he's gone, and I kind of reflect and look about the whole tenure, I do feel like there were points where I was definitely a bit overcritical of his time and his transfers here. I think there were a lot of like it was time for a change. I feel like it was time for a change for a couple of years now, and I think it's a little bit overdue. But I don't want to just be completely critical of his time here because I do think there were some good moments, especially early on.
Yeah, so listen, I agree with a lot of what you were saying, and the way I always look at it is breaking it up into two like periods of time, right? Pre 2020, post 2020, right? Looking into the first season, and you mentioned the ambition, I think it's a great way to describe it. He reset the market of what an expansion team could do, right? He went in and told people who were like, "Oh yeah, you either come in with a USL heavy side, or if you're brand new, you get some MLS experience, get some big old European guys, and you roll with it until you can, develop a few of your own players." No, they went out and they went and reset the market on what sort of players that you could realistically bring into this sort of group. Miguel Almiron, Josef Martinez, Villalba, LGP, Yamil Assad, young, upcoming South Americans that had this high upside resale value, but also could actually play. Like they weren't just hopeful, right? This team went on to be one of the best in the league in their first few years. They won the that's got to be a typo there. They won the 2018 Cup, but they really didn't win the 2018 Cup. Chris Armas won the 2018 Cup and gave it to them with his tactical masterclass.
Big ups,
Uh,
Chris Armas.
yes, my guy. And they also won the 2019 U.S. Open Cup, and I guess technically the 2020 and the 2021 Open Cup because you got CCC spots for it, so whatever.
Three-peat, three-peat.
But listen, outside of trophies, the most memorable thing about the early Boca years is that when he was backed by Arthur Blank money, he used it in a much different way than what other people were, and it catapulted the league into a new era, right? When new players come in, it's not the old European guys anymore. They're ambitious. They're ambitious. They try to get these up and coming stars. They try to play young, and then maybe one or two old guys around them, which is really nice to see. Gone are for the most part of the days where the only signings are these old Euro guys or random lower level players from countries you'd never heard of, right? I think that personally, I think Atlanta set the tone for MLS 3.0. I think they were the catalyst for that, and they should be commended for it, especially Bocanegra for taking the risk and reaping the rewards. However, then you go post 2020 and you start getting a little ahead of yourself. You're trying to bring in players like Ezekiel Barco and South American Player of the Year Pity Martinez and Rossetto and Moreno and Sosa and Eric Lopez and Alan Franco and these players that you gave huge transfer fees to and what felt like just because they came from a South American giant, Sao Paulo or whatever. And then you didn't know how they were going to fit in, right? It was a new hot thing everybody was doing. You're buying all these South Americans. Tata Martino was gone. You go through a plethora of coaches who could not recreate what they did in their first couple of years.
Don't
Boca,
you slander the good name of Frank de Boer.
listen, Boca changed the direction the league went. Then he got caught up in the same old thing. Since 2020, they haven't won a playoff series. They missed it 2 of the last 4 years. They were consistently top 5 in net spend in the league. Like they're not trying. They're not San Jose out here. Lots of money, not a lot of results. It's not good enough, right? And his response was interesting, right? Outside of Almada, he then shifts back over to Europe and then goes for more in prime players, right? Gigi, Sleaze, Gregerson, Lobajanidze, Muyumba, not retiring stars of yesteryear, but more in prime level guys that might be impactful long term, right? Some of them have panned out to a degree, but not nearly at the level that you would expect out of a club like Atlanta United. So you work in the fact that these players were getting flipped every 1 to 2 years, not because of their outstanding performances, but because they didn't fit your system. Boca was missing more than he was hitting, and that's not a good thing for your guy who's supposed to be making signings with lots and lots of money. So, a big focus on that is success rate early. The league caught up to him, and he didn't adapt after that. And now he was kind of average, and Atlanta wanted above that, and out he goes.
The way I think about it is the area of transfers that I think he fell short on the most, especially in these most recent years. And I'd argue it's probably the most important area of building a roster is the guys that are in between the designated player spot and the academy guys. So, you're I don't want to say role players, but like they're not your big money signings that you bring in, but they're also not just like these academy guys you're signing. It's like the guys similar in level to like Muyumba. And I don't want to I'm not that's not me calling like Muyumba out. I'm not saying he's bad or performing bad. I just think that level, or like Emerson Hyndman, maybe that's a better example, where he's not your superstar, he's not your academy graduate, because I think they've done well on both of those ends. They've had a lot of guys come through the draft or the academy and have blossomed and done well, and they've hit on a number of big time signings as well. But those kind of middle of the ground guys, I feel like they've been swinging and missing a lot on, and it's really hurt the team because like you had talked about, they rotate these guys, like the big time guys and the academy guys out, every couple of years. So who are the guys that stick around for even like when these guys are rotating in and out? It's those middle of the group guys. And I think they've been missing on that in the most recent years. And that's why the team's been performing poorly. And so
Right.
I think they did need a change in that regard.
Yeah, and if you're not holding these players for more than a season or two, how are you building a culture? How are you building a style? How are you building any of that sort of stuff, right? Totally, totally
Hmm.
fair. And I think you can also point a little bit to Pineda sticking around as long as he did. And I'm not super sure about if that's on Boca or Lagerwey or a combination of the two or whatever, but it was quite clear he wasn't getting the job done. You were giving him tool after tool after tool, and he wasn't doing what you were asking him to do. And he stuck around for, I think everybody can agree, a little bit longer than he probably should have. But I'm super interested to see how this shift in what Boca's done is coinciding with the arrival of longtime Sounders front office member Garth Lagerwey, right? A guy known for building great teams, but he had so much extra work to do. So I was listening to Soccer Wise, the Tom Bogert and David Goss podcast. Very good. Highly recommend. And they basically said that he spent the last 2 years trying to get out of all these bad contracts that Boca got them into. And you can notice the combination of the relative lack of big signings combined with the shifting out of a ton of other players that it's basically okay, I'm finally at a point where I can move you on. Now it's time for you to go Boca. Like I thought that was really interesting, but he made it, he made it very clear. There are two DP slots, $40 million to spend. It might be one of the most exciting spots for a future chief soccer officer and a future coach to land.
I'll take this opportunity to maybe transition into that second point that you were talking about with what does it mean for the future of Atlanta transfers? Because
That
that
was the
transitioned
idea.
perfectly into yeah, that transitioned perfectly into my notes because in my notes, literally the first thing I wrote it's the Garth Lagerwey era now, and I think he's going to bring in his guy to be in charge of this rebuild and change in transfer policy. And for me, what it means in terms of the future of Atlanta transfers, I mean, obviously, I don't know for sure the way that they're going to go, but I think it means maybe more stability in this team. And I think we were kind of talking about as this is something the team I think needs. As we talked about, they're constantly it was buying young players, building them up, selling them on. I get that. That's a good model. Maybe it's something they could look to still do with their academy, not necessarily with their top players. And I think Garth Lagerwey is a good person in charge who can shift them into that stable era because he did that with Seattle. And he brought in guys like Rui Diaz, Lodero, Clint Dempsey, who were going to be there for years and weren't necessarily guys you were bringing in to build up their transfer value and sell them on. They were guys that you brought in because they could win, because you think you can hold on to them and continue to win. And I think that could be a direction that Atlanta moves to going forward. So not necessarily looking to bring in your Thiago Almadas, where you could have a chance to a very high sell-on value, but bringing in a guy that's maybe 26, 27, or maybe like Moranchuk, like maybe he's a good example, where he's got some years in him. He's not a guy that you're looking to just build up and then sell on. He could come in, kind of make it a home here, do well, and then you add pieces around him who are in similar situations, and you can build some stability in the results of the team as opposed to these highs and lows that they keep going through because they keep bringing in players who do well and then selling them on. And then we have to start the whole process over again.
Yeah, so I noted that as well with Lagerwey, and obviously his time in Seattle stands out most to us because it's kind of right about the time we were getting into stuff like this. But he's so patient, and he's made it clear already, right? I'm not going to just go out and spend money to spend money, but they're going to find the right pieces to make the system fit, right? So he's going to go out there and wait till you find the right person, and it may be in the summer of next year, right? It may be, it may be mid-season, but he's going to get the guy that comes in and he's going to be the next Nico Ladero, not just to flip and make money on, but to go and win and build dynasties. I mean, he built Seattle to be one of the best in league history. I think he's going to bring in a chief soccer officer with a similar philosophy that he has, and they'll give it a good run. And one of the things that is rumored, and I'm not going to go too deep into it because it's not like we are, super uh, knowledgeable when it comes to front office guys, but Chris Henderson is on his way out of Miami, it sounds like, and it seems like they might link up again because I think he was there in the Seattle days as well. He kind of started over there, so you might see a link up there, and Chris did a really good job turning Miami around. You never know what might happen in Atlanta land.
Atlanta. Yeah, it could be. That's a good link.
Yeah.
Are you trying to come for Tom Bogert's job? Are you dropping links right now? Are you dropping
I am actually
rumors?
just repeating what Tom Bogert says. So
You're
he is my news source. Um,
the mini Tom Bogert. Mini
nah,
me.
my mustache ain't nearly that good.
That's
The
true. Nobody can replicate that mustache.
Yeah, but yeah, I think it's an exciting time to be a supporter of Atlanta. Way more than most other clubs. You got lots of money, lots of hype, and I want to say you guys have had it rough the last few years, but I mean, I'm a Red Bull supporter, so I won't ever say anybody's had it more down bad than me. Chicago, don't even speak. But this does feel
San
like a
Jose.
yeah, this does feel like a good step in the very, very good direction. So
Hopefully, yeah, hopefully. I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, like you had said, it's a good situation moving forward. A couple of open DP spots, and a lot of money to play with. So I hope they don't rush it. I'm glad they didn't rush it this summer and just be like, we got to bring in three DPs right now so we could challenge right now. But I'm glad they're going to take their time, do the proper research, get better contracts, don't get into these bad contract situations. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited to see what they can bring to the table.
I hope they bring nothing.